Cousin Jared, I feel like I have created Christmas for you. We are going to do 2 college football shows a week. The first one is your specialty totals, to the point where you've jokingly been called Cousin Totals. You get to pick a lot of unders, which is your brand.
Yep.
And then we get to do show number 2, where we talk about the best games that are also supposed to be close, because we're talking about money lines here. So we're not going to be covering a minus 20 game. It's all going to be tight games. You'll look on the list on that screen, and I'm excited to talk about a lot of these games.
Yeah.
And you get to throw in your small school games. I mean, I feel like what could be better for you?
I mean, really, what could be better? I get to do this. I get to talk about college football on YouTube and, Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts twice a week on Discord. And we also just passed 1 million views, on YouTube. I mean, kids, don't ever give up on your dreams. Even if you don't think it's a dream, don't give up.
Yeah, because I don't think either of us thought this would be a dream 5 years ago. I don't even know how to wrap my brain around 1 million views. I don't even know what that means. I don't know. It's like fake money. It's like when you talk about people having $1 billion. It's like I don't even understand what that means. Like, tell me more. 1 million views is incredible. And join us on Dub Club. We're going to send out the Survivor NFL pool later today, tonight, tomorrow, during the day, whatever. We're going to give out a year's worth of free subscriptions. First place, 6 months. Second place, 3 months. Third, fourth, and fifth will each get a free month. So you don't even have to win to get some free sports betting content. You just got to be part of the Dub Club, and you will get so much value. One of the other value things that you're going to get is, Cousin Jared, most weeks we talked about we're going to hop on Wednesday night, and we're just going to shoot the breeze and talk college football games that you like that we haven't covered on show. Things that you like that aren't official picks, things that they're now picks that we didn't get to talk about. Just kind of give your thoughts, because we kind of have a limited time here. We don't want to bog down the YouTube channel. We got a lot of videos already. And so for people to watch, so extra bonus content, if you're needing more college football content, get that on Dub Club. So many benefits, so much information, so many maths. There's a lot of maths on the Dub Club. If you want them, if not, I try to provide nice little succinct. Here's all the plays, and here's how I would play them. If you want to follow along, so you want simple, I got simple. You want in depth, I got in depth. I got position grade ratings, even at the college level. We'll talk about a couple of those today, especially when we get to Alabama, Texas, because whoo-wee boy, that one's going to be a fun one to break down. Because we want to recap anything else with week 1, especially Clemson or the ratings, I think, are the 2 things maybe to kind of touch on real quick before we get started.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to start with, so let's start with Clemson. That's where I'll go first. And I made a comment in the Discord during the game that I was just horrified by what I was seeing from Clemson's offense during that game. I don't want to. I'm not trying to make it sound like everything's okay with Clemson. That's not the case at all. But I have backed away from the ledge. Everything's not okay, but I have backed away from the ledge a little bit. When you look at the stats of that game, that's a game that Clemson probably should have won at least 50% of the time, if not more. And when you stop and think about what Clemson has been the past few seasons, that's kind of the team that they've been the past few seasons. Their defense has just been so good that they've been able to win those close games. I mean, how many times did Clemson find themselves in a close game late against a lower level ACC team that they should have blown out, and they were just kind of incapable of doing so?
And back in the day when they had Deshaun Watson, a long time ago now, it seems like those games were once a season, and it was usually at Syracuse on a Friday night, the weird game. Now, more frequently, it seems like it's been happening just, pretty casually, 3 or 4 times a year. It's more of a common occurrence now.
Yep, definitely. And so my thing is that I'm not sure that Clemson is any worse than they were last year. And so for an ACC team, that could still be 9 wins, maybe get to the conference championship game, depending on how the rest of their conference slate plays out. So I don't know that they're that different. But the thing is, I think we were all expecting quite a bit more from Clemson this year. And so I think that I was overreacting a little bit on Monday night. And I was just comparing them to my expectations and not comparing them to what they've been the past couple of years. And I think they're probably exactly what they've been the past few years.
I'll back that up with numbers. Right now, after that performance, Sideline has them ranked 19th, which I think kind of falls in line with what we've seen from Clemson. Mediocre offense relative to a good team, great defense, decent, but not fantastic. The rating, they've been probably rated higher than they should have been. I have their offense ranked 32nd, which seems fair. It's not a terrible offense. It's just not elite. It's not a right now. New coordinator, that might improve, but it hasn't improved yet. And so until it does, the model's now going to get more skeptical, which was a little more optimistic coming in. But after that first game, it didn't like what it saw. 7th ranked defense, so still a very good defense. But yeah, I'm like you, I look at this and I say that's pretty much what we see out of Clemson recently, and the reasons for optimism. Maybe that'll happen, but it didn't happen on night one, which kind of segues nicely to the rankings. Poor Kent State is ranked dead last. Sad for them. I'm sure they're nice people, but that was brutal. Number 1, Alabama by a long shot. Number two, Florida State. Barely. The Florida State, Michigan, Georgia are all rounding error apart. It's really a tie for second between those three. Ohio State really dropping out of that top group and down into 5th based off of fairly lackluster performance on the road there at Indiana. Escape with the win, which is all you can ask for. But Ohio State was that third team in that that top 4 trio, right? Alabama looked very good and separated themselves. Ohio State falling down. USC, Oregon, Oklahoma, etc. Kind of rounding out some of those other teams that we think are going to be pretty good. I don't know if anything jumped out to you in that, Cousin Jared.
I might be the lowest that we've seen Ohio State since we've been doing the show, since you've been having your ratings. I feel like that might be the lowest that we've ever seen Ohio State. It's maybe did we expect too much of LSU? Did Jaden Daniels maybe not regress, but be more the quarterback that we saw at the beginning of last season to the end of last season? Maybe. And that probably brings LSU down a notch. But it's hard not to say that after what you saw from Florida State, you're like, yeah, that seems about right. They seemed really, really good.
Yeah. LSU now down to 13th in the ratings. Jaden Daniels now down to the 11th best quarterback. Still good, just not in that top tier like we maybe thought after what we saw at the end of last year. He strikes me after seeing that game as a guy who is just going to have some great moments. We saw it like last year against Alabama. He's going to have some great games, but he might still have some clunkers as well. And that variability is going to prevent him probably at least this year for right now from being better. Who knows? Maybe that's his just bad game of the year, but a little bit more variability so far. Drake May, number 1 rated quarterback, according to Sideline. Caleb Williams, number 2. So again, all these fun things, stuff you can get on Dub Club. Nothing else really that I thought was overly interesting to note. That we won't also cover in the show because the surprises, some of the big movers we will talk about in show with some of these teams. So without further ado, we will get right to it here. We have a Friday night game, Illinois and Kansas. This should be a relatively tight contest. I think, the biggest interesting thing here to me is Kansas doesn't have a defense whatsoever. But they get a good offense. Illinois, really good defense, offensively challenged. Model still thinks their offense is okay. I think what the model is saying is Illinois offense getting a 101, basically at league average, college football average, is basically saying when you compare it to your top teams, it ain't good. Mm-hmm. But it's still better than the MAC offenses, and it's still better than Conference USA's offense, and it's still better than the AAC offenses, and it's still better than some of those. So I think what it's saying is it's just nothing special. And I contrast that with Kansas because we know Kansas is a good offense. With Kansas' defense, what the model is saying about Kansas' defense is it's not necessarily better than your standard AAC, Conference USA, MAC defense. It's saying it's kind of right in the ballpark of those. Some are better, some are worse. That's where the model thinks the difference lies in this game. That's why Illinois is ranked 23 spots ahead of them, according to the model. Again, you can see on the graphic on screen if you're with us on YouTube. Model says 58% chance Illinois wins, that they should be a 3-point favorite. Instead, they are a 3-point dog. We're going to take Illinois plus 130 as an A grade. Because of Jared, we were kind of chit-chatting here before the show. This is a really interesting case. How do you feel about the plus 130 versus taking the 3 points?
And this is we'll have a game later in the show where I kind of use the opposite reasoning from this, but this is one game where I have no idea what the pace is going to be like. I have no idea what the total is going to end up being. I have no lean one way or the other on the total here, because it really is going to come down to who dictates the pace of this game and who gets to play the type of game that they want. Because as you kind of alluded to, Illinois is going to want to slow it down, grind it out, defense first, and Kansas is going to want to play quickly. They're going to want to have a bunch of big plays on offense, and they're going to hope that their defense isn't a sieve. And I don't know if it will be or not. If history tells us anything, it will be. And so with that in mind, that I feel like there's a lot that I don't know about this game. And also knowing that, just one of the most common outcomes is 3 points. Mm-hmm. And I would also add, Illinois seemingly having a proclivity to play in crazy close games at all times, conference, in conference, out of conference, day games, night games. Illinois just always seems to find itself in some kind of crazy close game. Personally, I'm probably going to take the 3 points in this situation, just to kind of have them in my back pocket. But either way, this feels like, whether it's the money line or taking the 3 points, feels like a good play for a game where clearly Illinois has a much better defense. And I think that's going to travel fairly well. And so whether you want to take the 3 points, take the money line, I think either way it's good play.
I've got Toledo ranked 62nd, which is basically what Kansas is ranked. Mm-hmm. The difference is the model gives Toledo a below average offensive grade, but a really good defensive grade. So it's a similar team with regards to the quality, but a very different style of football that Toledo's playing versus what Kansas is playing. This is not the same Toledo team that we have seen some years in the past where they're looking to put up 60 points. The model does not really think that they're equipped to do that. Maybe against some of the MAC schools they are, right? Mm-hmm. But they were never going to be able to do that against Illinois. So Illinois was able to come out with a win there. I don't know if it bodes better or worse for Illinois playing a different style, but I'm really fascinated to see the contrast of styles, who exerts their will in this game, because one team wants to do one thing and the other team wants to do the exact opposite with regards to the style of this game. So Illinois is the side the model likes. It's personal preference, I think, whether you like the +3 or the +130, as we always talk about with these situations. I always tell people, do what works for you. What works for me is these money lines, because I got the math on my side. I can do math, and a lot of people can't do math, and that gives me good money line edges. So that's why I like it. I like the +130 here. I like my incentives aligned with the other teams. And so +130 it is for me on the A grade. It's the only Friday night game. No other games Friday night.
That's okay. We'll give it a pass since the NFL is kicking off this weekend.
No games Thursday because the NFL game. They always let the NFL have their spotlight for that. So moving on to big noon Saturday here. Nebraska and Colorado. Oh boy. Colorado and the hype train has left the station. I hope you were on board, because if you weren't, it is long gone. I mentioned this to the Discord. If you don't read Bill Connolly, shout out to him, fantastic writer, knows a lot about college football. You should follow him on Twitter. He's on ESPN Plus. Is it called now? I guess ESPN Plus. His SP Plus rating system. He talked about it today. That his model is going to have a hard time tracking with Colorado on some of these transfers. And I was telling the Discord, I was very pleased with my model being player-based. It's able to react a little faster. The other reason it's built to react a little faster is the prior structure that I'm using is built to kind of be a prior structure from a couple of years ago. And if there's no data, it kind of weakens that out. And so when you start getting data, it's going to start making a move. But if you have data from the past couple of seasons, it's not going to quite overreact to what happens recently. And that's what's going to allow the model to be pretty reactive. I don't build models to be reactive. My default is react slow. If you've been watching the show any length of time, we've talked about that. It's supposed to react slow because overreacting is usually bad. So the fact that this is reacting so much to Colorado and a couple other teams, we'll talk about one of them later here today, I think it's a sign that the model's doing its job, seeing that there's a lot of talent on this team. It did come together a lot quicker than we thought. Very average defense, below average results on defense. Part of that was the pace of that game was, as we talked about, way faster than we expected it would be. TCU's offense is good. Their defense is bad. It was a shootout. I don't think that's necessarily an indictment of Colorado's defense being terrible. I think it's kind of like we talked about Illinois' offense. Colorado's defense and Illinois' offense are kind of similar. Not really good enough to make the playoff, but better than a MAC school, right? Better than Conference USA, that sort of thing. Colorado's offense above average, and that's what we saw their strength. 106 grade. Their Nebraska ranks pretty average. Cousin Jared, first off, let's get to the bigger. You'll see on the screen there, it's actually flipped on the. You can see that on the spread. It should be Colorado -6.5, Nebraska +6.5. Colorado has a 66% chance to win. I think Colorado wins this 2 out of 3 times, so -160 is a pretty smart pick. B grade value, a little bit lower on that price to make it A grade. I think all the A grade value has gone off Colorado, but I still think there's time to get on board. There's some resistance to this number because I think people are saying, what if Colorado is it for real? What if it was one game? TCU doesn't have a defense. Absolutely, TCU doesn't have a defense. That's why the model only gives Colorado a 106 on offense and not a 130, because part of that was TCU's defense. But Colorado's team is decent. This game's in Boulder. And the model doesn't know this, but Nebraska's involved. So you kind of like playing the money line against them, right? Nebraska, doesn't matter who's coaching them, apparently. To win, to lose 1-score games. What's your take on this game, Cousin Jared?
Man, I feel like everybody has given Colorado their due, and rightly so, for how that game played out. Somehow, they have turned my mother-in-law into a huge Colorado Buffalo fan. Really, the powers of Deion Sanders go beyond comprehension.
He's got charisma just oozing out of every.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Honestly, what I took from that game is, obviously underestimated Colorado. I'm a little bit worried about TCU now. Like, it kind of seems like every other Sonny Dykes team last year. And after what you saw with Clemson with Garrett Riley at OC, it's like how much of that was Max Duggan? Anyway, so lots of different thoughts there.
How much of that's what we talked about, which was the fear in that game of Chandler Morris was their starting quarterback in year one, and they struggled at last year's god-awful Colorado team. And now it's like, and now he's supposed to be okay again. It's like, that whole thing is – I don't know what to make of it other than like I'm concerned. I have concerns. I'm like,
So I think this is a good play. I think that Colorado has more talent than Nebraska does right now, and the atmosphere is going to be insane. Playing at altitude, rivalry game. If ever there was a time that Deion is going to get his kids up to play, which you think is probably going to be most weeks, this is definitely going to be one of them.
These first two. Last week being at the team that played for the national title, and this week rivalry first home game after that big upset. This is going to be the most stoked the Colorado crowd is going to be in decades.
Definitely. So, but you mentioned that Wednesday show where we're just kind of going to spitball some college football stuff. I don't even know what day of the week it's going to come out. I lose track. We do so many.
What are days?
What is time? But I will give you a brief glimpse as to something that you might catch on that show that we have on Dub Club if you join. Matt Rule has an affinity for first half unders. Going back to his time at Baylor, first half under cashed seemingly like 10 out of 12 games for Baylor that season.
Maybe 11.
Maybe 11. And, we talked about it last week. Didn't talk about it on the show. We talked about it before we came on the show. I was like, hey, we need to put, first half under on Minnesota, Nebraska, the honorary Matt Rule play. And sure enough, it came through. So, hey, that may be something I'm looking at this game too. Maybe we think that this total is a little bit too high. Maybe we think that there might be value on something like a first half under. So anyway, just a little preview of what you might get.
I feel like you gave it away. There's nothing really. You didn't really tease very well. You just kind of showed everything.
I was just giving them a taste of what they would get if they joined the club.
There you go. I think the other thing to note about the total, since we're here, we'll talk about it real quick, is that I think the model's adjusted to the pace of Colorado. The pace is definitely faster than we thought. I'm not saying the under hits for sure. I am saying I think the biggest overreaction people are going to make is that Colorado's offense is better than it is and their defense is worse than it is. And I think it's probably not quite as much. So that's what the model's trying to tell you, that part of that was TCU being a team with a good offense and a terrible defense. While we're here at TCU, this is something to know. I've got them down to 34th. Most projection systems didn't have them number 2. Let's say that much coming into the season. Mine did not either, but now they're down to 34th. 17th best offense, still 75th on defense, below average defense, which is saying something given. Again, below average means you're being compared more to the group of 5 teams rather than the Power 5 teams. So I think that might be part of it. But again, Colorado definitely improved. This week, their defense will probably showcase a little more because I do believe it to be a more defensive style game, given what Matt Rule is going to do and the way that he can dictate games with the style of football he plays. He seemed to do it in week 1, Nebraska. As a Baylor fan, it looked just like those last 2 seasons at Baylor. The first season didn't really count. They had literally no players. They won 1 game all season. The next 2 seasons, though, that looked just like Matt Rule Baylor. And so it looks like that's what we're going to see from Nebraska. So I'm really interested to see these 2 teams. This season should be a fun game. I think Colorado wins. You can lay the points. I'm going to lay the -160 B grade value. After going from talking about my school's former coach to your current school, Texas A&M, ranked 18th according to the model. Miami ranked number 24. I think A&M should be a road favorite in here, but not by much. I've got them at 1.1 point favorite, 53% to win. The interesting thing to me here, Cousin Jared, we talked about this before show, Texas A&M offensively got a 105 entering the season, which was not great. Part of the reason A&M didn't score a lot was the pace. But a 105 is not great. I mean, it's well behind conference champions. It's well behind top 20 schools. Up to a 113. We talked about this a little bit on the first show, that this offense, your Aggie offense, might have a little bit of a pulse quarterback and might play a little bit better. And Model's taking note and says the best offense in this game is Texas A&M. But interestingly enough, Miami's defense, which we know is good, grades out better than Texas A&M's. That is the surprising thing to me. Obviously, it's close. It's really rounding here. Just the fact that my number for Miami is that low tells you why the total in this game is low. We have 2 good defenses. This Miami defense is for real. This should be a pretty tight game. Plus 170 is just an absurd price, in my opinion, for this. A grade pick on Miami, again, or if you want to take the points, either way, we're going to stick consistent to the money line. My encouragement to you, viewer, come up with a system you like, whether it's all like the money lines like we're going to do. We're going to play them between the 500s. We're not going to play more than -500 or more than +500 because that's just a little bit, it's hard to figure that out. But the scaling system I've built where you add 2, 1.5 units for a C, 2 units for a B, 3 for an A. If you have an A grade play, even at -500, it's 2.5 to win 5. That's about the most extreme we want to go. That's kind of out there for a lot of people. That's the limit I'm going to push. But that's my system. Come up with the system you want. But whether it's taking the points or the plus odds, this feels like too much of a coin toss situation here. These plus odds are just too enticing to me. Cousin Jared, this reminds me a lot of our baseball games where we'll talk about taking a who the heck knows type game and taking plus odds and be like, hey, we're going to win about half the time. Give me the plus odds, right?
Yeah. I feel like A&M's defense and Miami's defense, this feels about right to me. You know, maybe I would have had these flipped, would have thought A&M would have been the 78 and Miami would have been the 80. But either way, I feel like the defenses are pretty equal here. I like what I saw from Texas A&M's offense. It was New Mexico, but I like what I saw from them. What I would say last year watching this game, Tyler Van Dyke could not have had a worse game than what he had against A&M in that game. And don't get me wrong, A&M did some good things defensively in that game, but some of that was just like, it was one point in the game where I was wondering if he was hurt because he just did not look like himself. Had the whole offseason talked about transferring, ended up not transferring, looked good in their first game against Miami of Ohio. I think that Miami's offensive rating might be a tick or 2 higher than this. I think they might be getting a little dinged from, you mentioned that the model has been adjusting quickly, but I think there might be just a little bit getting dinged from how bad they looked at times last season. Who can forget the, what was it, triple or quadruple overtime 14-12 game against Virginia? That was one. I
had forgotten about that until you reminded me. That was miserable.
That was really bad. So this feels like
I don't even remember if we won or lost our bet on that game. It was still miserable.
We won. But we had the under, of course. But you know, and how many times do you win under when the game goes to triple overtime? This feels like a game. I think A&M might be slightly better, but it's on the road. I feel like that's kind of a wash for any of the advantage that A&M might have. So I agree with you. Plus 170 seems like way too much. And I may have said, hey, on that Illinois-Kansas game, I'm going to take the 3 points. Something I like. I think there's too much value on the money line here. I like the plus 170 odds. So you can get plus 4 with Miami and get plus 4.5 with Miami. But me personally, I'm taking the plus 170.
Interesting. I did not know where you were going. I almost thought you might say the other direction and say good defenses, low scoring game, tight contest, take the points. It's a higher likelihood winner.
Yeah, I don't know with what I've seen from both of these offenses this year. Obviously, of course, if this game goes under, I will not be shocked. But if this game went over after what I've seen, I would also not be shocked. Give me the plus 170. I think definitely compared to last season, I don't think the 4.5 points holds the same value that it did in this game last season.
And you're going to see, again, a fairly fast adjusting model, as fast as I can reasonably make it. But it can only go so fast when it has a lot of data from last year. It's going to take more than one game to override when you have a full season, or in some cases 2 seasons for some of these guys. Very few, anybody has 3 seasons at this point. That no one's really playing for that long for the most part. So going back too far, it doesn't really matter. But some of these guys have a lot of data, so we can only adjust so fast. It's been one game, but you're right. There were some signs in that one game that maybe this is going to be a little bit of a different matchup than last year's punt fest that was showcasing defenses. But yeah, plus 170 here. Who the heck knows? I'm with you. I think A&M's a better team. Got them as a better team, but on the road, kind of cancels out. Too good to pass up on those odds. A little fun action here. Texas State and UTSA. First off, I feel like sideline is very high on UTSA. I was shocked at 37. I think that's a little too high personally. They played Houston very well. We got the Houston money line, A grade play on that one. Did not get the over. That game did not play out like we thought. And I think that's a very interesting question to ask yourself, viewer, to think about. Was that UTSA? Was that Houston? Was it both? Like, why did that game grind out? We know what Texas State wants to do. We knew coming in, getting the former coach McCarnett Ward, who was setting all sorts of records and doing incredible things there, brought in a ton of transfers. We were very low on Texas State and Colorado, both of those transfers. Model's really adjusting. Texas State up to number 83. And honestly, they might get higher depending on exactly how real this is. Part of that was Baylor. Baylor struck now down to number 79 after that performance. And my biggest concern for that performance was, of course, their offensive line. Of course, they're also partially number 79 because Blake Shapen is out, and the model knows about that. And I can tell about injuries, which is a very nice feature. We'll talk about an injury to a quarterback later that affects one of these games. That said, Texas State going up. And, how we know how they want to play. How does UTSA want to play? I would have sworn this is going to be a high scoring back and forth contest, but we saw UTSA play some lower scoring games last year. We saw Houston play some lower scoring games too. We just didn't think that was their real MO. So what's going on there? Who was that? Because is this going to be an up-tempo game, or is UTSA going to try to grind this one out? I don't really know the answer. UTSA is the better team. They're at home. They should be favored. They win this game 3 out of 4 times, but you can get Texas State plus 370. Offers a little bit of value. This is a plus expected value play, only a C grade play, not because of anything other than the difference between the probability they win according to the model, 24%. Comparing that to plus 370 is not quite as large as some of our other edges, is really the only reason it's a C grade. Because, Jared, you think it's worth our time and our money to sprinkle a little bit on Texas State. And again, the benefit to this system is, my official recommendation on this is to risk a mere 0.32 units. And if you win 1.18 units. So this is one where we're not risking a lot, but we're going to take a chance on a dog. Might be a little bit live here. It looked pretty good last week. UTSA's, maybe better than Baylor. I can't believe I'm saying that. We'll find out, I guess, this week. Because, Jared, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, I know what you, viewer, our listener, are thinking, that, this is just cousin Jared getting all riled up because UTSA did not look great against Houston, and Texas State obviously looked like they hung the moon against Baylor. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to take away anything from Texas State. Good job, GJ Kinney, bringing in some transfers there and keeping that trademark offense of his, getting that going pretty early. So kudos to him on that. But I want to talk more about UTSA, and felt like Houston's defense, we didn't know what we were going to get. They had some question marks this season, and man, UTSA did not look good against that that Houston defense. And more so, I want to tackle about our boy Frank Harris, who had a torn ACL, or had an injury that he was recovering from through the offseason. He just looked a step slower to me. He did not look like he was 100%. 3 interceptions in the third quarter. Not to mention that, and I still don't remember his name, but the wide receiver that transferred to Ole Miss, who was their best wide receiver all conference the year before that, now playing for Ole Miss. I'm wondering if this UTSA offense has just taken a step down. And I am by no means saying that Texas State is going to be able to slow down UTSA. But what I am saying is UTSA, offensively, you better be firing on all cylinders when you go up against this Texas State team, because it can very quickly, you could find yourself down 10 points, 14 points or something if you mess around, have a lot of turnovers in one quarter like you did against Houston. So it's a lot of points if you wanted to take the points. But again, I don't know if this matters. If UTSA plays the game that they should, they probably win this game by like 14 points or something. So again, this is a situation where I think the money line is more beneficial, because if Texas State is in this game, I think they have a great chance to win it. And I'm not sure that the points really matter. So yeah, this is definitely like a, hey, take a flyer on this, on the money line. And again, Texas State, kudos to them. But for me, this is more, I'm not sure. I don't love what I saw from UTSA on offense, and you just better be able to score some points against Texas State.
Yeah. This is going to be a game. We're going to, at the end of the season, we would come back and report exactly how what we did. But we're going to take a bunch of these games that are in the plus 400-ish range that we think have about a 25% chance of winning. We're going to take them. We know we're probably going to win about 1 out of 4. But when we do, we're going to profit off of that, because the 3 losses will be more than made up for by the 1 win that we have in those 4 games. Mm-hmm. So, this is not to say take every plus 370 team. It's take every plus 370 team that you think can win about 25% of the time. And not every plus 370 will be that way. There are several plus 370s that I would run away from. But this is one that, has a chance to win. You made some great points there. Because in general, I want to follow up with some backup stats. UTSA's offense dropped 4 points from last week, but their defense improved and went from below average to above average, mainly on the strength of their defensive line, which now ranks as the 23rd best defensive line in college football. UTSA, you talked about them. What offensively stands out to me is their skill at offensive line, and that's Texas State, where they excel with that offensive line. That's where they really prevented Baylor's defense from causing any problems and got that offense going, because the line set them up for success. UTSA, Frank Harris still pretty good, but as you mentioned, a drop down in the rest of the offense, specifically their offensive line, now ranks 80th in college football. It's a below average grade. And so that's, I think, what probably messed them up a little bit too, is that they weren't protecting very well and making Harris, a little bit uncomfortable, running a little bit when he didn't want to, that sort of situation. And like you said, UTSA should be able to score here. Baylor scored, but Baylor wasn't firing all cylinders, and Texas State messed around and won that game. And that's kind of what we're saying here. Texas State might mess around and win this game. So plus 370 here, worth a small flyer. Sticking with some good small school action here, Marshall and East Carolina. Marshall's decent, ranked 66. East Carolina is not, down outside of the top 100. Marshall's pretty decent on both sides of the ball, a little bit better defensively, slightly below average on offense. East Carolina, not a very good offense, not a very good defense. Model says Marshall wins this a nice 69% of the time, so we're going to take Marshall minus 155. B grade model says they win by an average of about 8 points. Because Jared, why are we talking about this game?
That is a wonderful question. Why are we talking about this game? And I, viewer, really feel bad that I led us astray on the over on the Michigan East Carolina game last week. And I don't even remember. Was it a B grade? I don't even remember what it was. Maybe a C grade. I can't remember. It should have been under. And the reason that it should have been an underplay is because East Carolina was replacing Holton Ahlers, who was the quarterback there for approximately 37 seasons. If you don't believe me, Holton Ahlers, I believe, is in the top 15 in NCAA history for touchdowns accounted for. He was there for forever. And even when he was there, the offense was up and down. But you'll remember they definitely had some good seasons when I think it was like North Carolina. They played really close. The first game of one season, they gave South Carolina all they could handle.
NC State maybe last year, maybe like
maybe it was
bowl or something.
Yeah. So East Carolina definitely gave a lot of trouble to the bigger Carolina schools there. He's gone. And obviously, you're going to struggle against Michigan most of the time in that situation, but even more so since Ahlers being gone. And the thing is that Marshall has a pretty good defense for a group of 5 team. And so I think what you're going to see here, even though it's at home, I think that Marshall is still going to be able to shut down East Carolina's offense. I just think it's too much to overcome when you lose that much experience on offense. I definitely expect East Carolina to have a down season on the offensive side of the ball. They're at 89 right now. Wouldn't surprise me if they're down to 85, 84 or something after this next game. So for me, this is just something where it's two smaller schools. Maybe people don't know as much about them. Maybe that affects the lines. But I think this is just something where Marshall has a really good defense. And I think that East Carolina has a very, very not great offense this season. I think that defense is going to carry Marshall.
And I've been kind of referencing this all show. It's not this simple, but 100 being middle of the road, better than 100 is we're starting to compare you to Power 5. Worse than 100 is Group of 5. It's not that simple, but that's kind of what we're saying here. Marshall being a 97 on the right side of 100 for the defensive scaling puts them more in comparison with those top schools. Obviously, they're nowhere near Alabama, Georgia, that sort of thing, but they're more with the weaker Power 5 schools, which is pretty good defense, versus so many of their counterparts are going to be in the 100s, 1-teens, that sort of thing. So Marshall's towards the top of your Group of 5 defenses. Minus 155, pretty short price here, so B grade. And just want to come back to one thing you said here. East Carolina's quarterback now ranks 101st, so a massive drop-off from a guy who was pretty solid. Not a top 5 quarterback necessarily across college football, but still one that was very good, very underrated, very good for a Group of 5, and led them to some pretty good times. And it's been tough sledding without him.
Yep. And this is a game I would implore you right now. You can lay 3.5 points with Marshall. I would implore you to take the money line on this game. I don't want to get involved with laying points, especially more than 3 points in a game that I think is going to be low scoring.
And especially on the road, right? Again, this is why we talk about the money line. Our incentives are aligned. And it really played out in college basketball, but it plays out in garbage time in college football too. So many times in college basketball, you're laying 4 points and it's like, there's 3 seconds to go and it's a 5-point game and they just let the guy run down and have a layup because nobody cares, right? That stuff is maddening. The same thing here. If they're up 9 or 10 late, we don't want to have to care what happens. We've got the victory because they don't care either. They just want to get out of Dodge with the win here. Road wins for Group of 5 schools. Just go get them. They do not care how it happens. So we have our incentives aligned there at minus 155. To the night slate, and boy, the games pick up from here. Oregon at Texas Tech. Oregon, I don't think anybody would be surprised to see me have them number 7. Texas Tech at 61. I am not high on this Tech school. They did not look very good in Wyoming. Part of that absolutely is the Laramie effect. I understand that is a very tough place to play, notoriously. That said, Tech looked good for the first quarter and then kind of forgot how to football. And the fact that they looked so good for the first quarter shows you that it's not all about the location. They were fine playing on the road and did really well. And then when they didn't football for 3 quarters, they got themselves into a double overtime game and ended up losing it. The loss is kind of irrelevant. We grade this based off the plays, not off the result, because the plays are more predictive than the result. So I'm not really worried about the fact that had they gotten or not gotten a 2-point conversion. What I'm saying is if Tech had played that first quarter, the rest of the game, they'd be ranked a lot higher right now and have a lot more faith in them. So far, though, can't be impressed with this Tech school. I have Oregon by 18. Say that they win this 88% of the time. Oregon has the number 2 rated offense in the country, according to the model, with a 133. Their defense only ranked 38th. Obviously, their defense isn't going to carry them. Quarterback, I've got them at 12th. Running back, 3rd. Wide receiver, tight end, 7th. Offensive line, 3rd. This is a really good offense for Oregon. And Tech doesn't really have their defense isn't terrible, 96 you could see, but they don't really have the horses to hang with Oregon, even though this game's in Lubbock. Games get weird in Lubbock, too. I am well aware of that. But I just don't know if night games in Lubbock, I know that crowd will be crazy. Tech actually gets a larger than average home field advantage because of that. But I just don't think these two teams are in the same ballpark. I think games get weird in Tech when they can be a frisky underdog. This Tech offense is not the Tech offense that we've seen upset teams in Lubbock. I was not that impressed with them. They run a lot of plays. They were very aggressive on 4th down last year. They didn't get to help them against a team like Oregon. Oregon minus 260, A-grade play, one of the stronger plays on the board. Because, Jerry, what do you got?
I think because Oregon's offense is so good, you could easily get the connotation with them that the defense is just so-so, and it's the offense that's carrying them and the defense is just average. But the defense is above average. And I think about a lot of the teams that have gone into Lubbock that have had problems. They've either been like the Oklahoma teams who had no defense at all, or they've been like the Texas teams who had a great defense and no offense at all. I kind of have a hard time thinking of like a really well-balanced team that's gone into Lubbock that has gotten upset. In fact, I can almost think of the reverse, where a really well-balanced team goes into Lubbock and wins fairly frequently, and that's Kansas State. And I know I did not expect to compare Oregon to Kansas State here, but
I like that comparison though.
But it is a team that just is solid football team. Yeah, just all around, and I think that's what you're going to get from Oregon. And I mean, man, I felt great about Texas Tech last week going into Wyoming. That was one of my favorite plays of the day, but oh boy, was I wrong. And
you looked great for a quarter.
Yeah, but let me tell you, if Wyoming can find a way to slow them down, Oregon will be able to do the same thing. I'm afraid of. But man, Bo Nix, just curious, where would Bo Nix rate in your model?
12th.
Yeah, that feels about right. Top 10 quarterback. I think he's just going to have a field day against this Tech defense. So again, I feel like a lot of those memories that we have of teams going into Tech, they were deficient on one side of the ball, but this Oregon team, I don't think is that.
Wyoming's defense gets a 103. So this is going to be tough for defense. Now, again, home road, that matters, right? I'm not going to say that doesn't matter. So maybe it's on average the same. Maybe playing a 103 on the road is the same as playing a 92 at home. You could convince me of that. I would say, sure, that seems rounding error aside. Yeah. That's very reasonable. So Tech's going to struggle. And it's almost like you talked about with Texas State and UTSA, right? You're going to play with Oregon, you better be scoring some points because they're going to put up some points with that offense. It's like you said, I think it's a good point. They are better offensively than defensively. Like the screen shows that. Don't mistake what we're saying for that. But what we're saying is it's not that the defense is bad. It's still a top 40 defense. And an offense like Tech isn't better than Oregon's defense. Maybe at home, maybe they can put up a few points, but I don't think it'll be too many. To come back to your other point there, Cousin Jared, the quarterbacks that were at Tech for those upsets, I can name them for you. Yeah. I don't think that we have that level of quarterback here. Slough, whatever his name is. I don't think he might get there. Tech had the issue last year where they had last couple of seasons, it seemed like, where they've had like three quarterbacks all rotating around, and partially because injuries, partially because who knew who was better. And now it's just the one guy, like everybody else left. But I still think they're all kind of average. I mean, they are not the Cliff Kingsburys of the world. They are not BJ's Simons, whatever his name is. They are not.
Patrick
Mahomes, if anyone's ever heard of that guy. They are not.
Yeah.
Baker Mayfield at Oklahoma, but
He played at Tech before he went to Oklahoma.
But does anybody remember that? Like he wasn't Baker Mayfield at Tech, right? He was just a random quarterback. Yeah, and they had someone else too. Now I say I can remember their names, but they've had some great quarterbacks in there who, even though like a guy like Kingsbury did not make a name for himself as a quarterback in the NFL, he was a fantastic college quarterback, and that's what you've had. At Tech, you've had some fantastic college quarterbacks, including some guys who set some records. Graham Harrell is another one, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, another fantastic college quarterback, even if he didn't make a name for himself at the pros. We haven't seen that from Tech in the last couple of years. And so that, to me, is the biggest difference of Lubbock can get weird, but you need something to pull an upset on a team like Oregon, who, again, I think is legitimately good. 7 p.m., Texas and Alabama. Cousin Jared, of every projection system, I am probably the lowest on Texas of all of them. Number 32. I'm not buying this Texas team at all. Caleb Ewers looks just like he did last year. And there's a reason he was like the fourth stringer at Ohio State. I am well aware of the recruiting rankings, but my model builds in those recruiting rankings, and as it gets data, starts to forget that, for lack of a better word, starts to minimize that. And we have enough data on Caleb Ewers that we should be kind of minimizing that by now. And we should be focusing on what he's doing on the field. If you watch that Rice game, which many of you probably did not, I did, because again, for now, while we're building a house, I'm living with my parents, and my dad's a UT alum, so I watched. That was one of the 4 screens was Texas and Rice. He missed like 9 receivers. There's a reason he grades terribly because he misses open receivers. It's not rocket science. So, I mean, I don't know why everyone else is so high on Texas. They're being treated like they're the mid-aughts Texas. You know, they had a great first half against Alabama last year at home. They almost pulled the upset. They were, holding on for dear life in the second half. But while I'm well aware of that one game, to ignore all of the other games that Texas has had is foolish. I've got Caleb Ewers as the 73rd best quarterback in college out of 103. That's bottom half. They're really unproven at running back. They started a true freshman who suffered an injury against Rice. Their offensive line, while all 5 of those guys returned from last year, hasn't looked great. They've got some skill on the outside for sure. And their defense is absolutely good. I've got their defense ranked 8th. Nothing bad to say about Texas defense, but Alabama's defense just almost breaks the model. It's almost 3 standard deviations better than average. We never see that in baseball because there's only 30 teams. In college football with 133, it's a little bit less surprising that you see one, but man, that's a shockingly low number.
Yep.
Oh, and Alabama has the number 4 ranked offense as well. I mean, I don't understand this spread. The model says Alabama wins by an average of 23 points. I will put my money on the final margin of victory is going to be closer to 23 than the current line of 7. I think it's closer to 23 than 7. A-grade pick on Alabama. 94% win probability. And I'm not saying Texas can't win this game. I'm saying there's a 6% chance. 6% chance things happen 1 out of every 18 or 19 times. Sure, we could be in that world. We have seen teams, your Texas A&M team, go into Alabama. Mm-hmm. It can be done. You can get down to that last play and have a chance to win and maybe pull the upset there. I'm not buying into this Texas offense. I don't think they're going to move the ball at all. I don't know. Am I crazy?
Well, Quinn Ewers, you called him Caleb, but Quinn, no. I think
why,
he has.
Why did I do that? I don't know.
has some questions. Definitely. I can't really add anything on to what you say there. I think Alabama is really, really good. I think that Jalen Milroe is going to challenge, definitely not like Bryce Young, but the way that he can run the ball is going to challenge the Texas defense. Yada yada yada. All of the things that you would think about an Alabama.
I heard some Jalen Hurts comparisons this week.
I mean, he looked good, and I would say like the Jalen Hurts that was at Oklahoma. I mean, at least this last week, he looked more like the Jalen Hurts that was at Oklahoma, more so than the Jalen Hurts that was
not the Jalen Hurts that was at Alabama.
Yeah. So, and
what is this with quarterbacks go to Oklahoma and then get massively better? I wonder, if it's Baker Mayfield now, multiple.
Well, it's Lincoln Riley who now has Caleb Williams. That's the thing. But anyway, and then of course the Alabama defense is going to challenge Quinn Ewers. If you think that he's been missing throws before, then of course you're going to do that again. I will go back to something that I think it's Andy Staples that has said this. Like Nick Saban has seemed way too happy at his press conferences. Whether it was in spring practice or, early fall camp or the games and everything, he just seems too happy. And that usually means that his team is really, really good. If Nick Saban's happy, I'm going to be happy back in Alabama. That's really all I can say.
We've not talked about that, so I had not heard that story. But yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for the first time, I think since I've done these ratings, which I've formalized, had different betting systems, but formalized these rankings now 3 or 4 years. This is the first time I think a team has really separated themselves as number one. It's always been some combination of the Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Bama, and there were times when Bama fell out of that top group.
Yeah, or Clemson
for a while.
There. Yeah,
yep, a couple years ago, right? But Bama really separated themselves out. Like again, it's you can't ignore what happened in week 1. Talk about Oklahoma. We can't ignore that, right? Like that says something. How you play against bad schools matters. How you play against good schools matters. It all matters. We just have to adjust for it accordingly, look at the play, see what happened. And this Bama team I made the comment on Discord. I said, if I was going to write an article about these columns, it would be, it's Alabama's world. We're just living in it. That'd be the title of the article, because for right now, and this is our best prediction right now, like some games happen and some things happen, guys get hurt, different things. Who knows, right? Where we'll be in a month from now. But looking at it right now, this Bama team looks legit. So I don't know. Maybe we'll be eating crow next week. Maybe Texas pulls off the upset of all upsets. We're obviously not going to be right on every pick. We know we're going to lose some minuses. The whole point is that we're going to win a higher percentage of them than the minuses we're betting. But yeah, I mean, this feels like a really good Alabama team. And when Nick Saban has those really good teams, when Nick Saban is unhappy, it's because his team's like the third best team in college football. Right. Yeah. And when he's happy, it's because like they just destroy everybody. That's what I think is going to happen. Quinn Ewers played the game of his life for the first half last year, before first quarter-ish or whatever, before getting hurt. And I don't know, maybe the injury affected him. I don't know. But he had flashes of that. He looked decent in the bowl game, but he, for the most part, did not look like that quarterback. Alabama has the tape. They know exactly what he did. He was hitting the deep balls in that game. And I think it was just fluke. I think we talk about variance all the time. There's variance in your betting results. There's variance in guys play to play, right? He happened to hit the deep balls. I don't think he's going to hit those. I think Bama dared him to because they know he can't throw it. And he happened to do that in that game. That doesn't mean he's going to do it again. I think he's not. That doesn't mean he can't, because occasionally guys just hit passes, right? Yep. Bad players occasionally look good and good players occasionally look bad. But that's the thing with Ewers, is that he's not very good. He occasionally does look good, just like good players occasionally look bad. He's going to have the game of his life for them to have any chance. But I feel like, model projects 40-16. I'd kind of be surprised if Texas got to 16, to be completely honest. I just don't, especially with the clock running rules and fewer plays. Yep. I just, this kind of feels like, 42-10. I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I think, I don't need to go on a diatribe about Texas, but it's every year Texas is back, and then until they're not. And so, I'm not saying that I don't want Texas to be back. It would be great if we could just come on here and have to begrudgingly talk about Texas every week. There's so much good games.
Yes, when your top programs, when your blue bloods are good, it's good for the sport. I mean, it's good when everybody's good, right? It's good when you have fun upsets, but it's also good when the teams people care about are good, right? We want that. We want all the teams to be good, right?
Yeah.
But Texas,
I've literally said this for 3 years now, and apparently 1 million views, although I'm not on a lot of them. It's just every year Texas is back until they're not. And I'm just not going to believe it until I see it.
It's been a lot of years that's happened. We've made a lot of money fading Texas. We're going to try for the same thing here. Love laying the points. We've like made 7. My goodness.
I feel like we've made a lot of money fading Texas for 15 years now.
It's been at least a decade for sure.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. I don't know what else to say about this one. Maybe we'll be eating crow, but like I said, I think Alabama's going to destroy them. I have no faith in Texas scoring. I have no faith in their offense. And their defense is good, but I mean, Alabama's got a good enough offense at home. Alabama's going to score some points. You're not going to hold them down at home. Unless maybe you're like Georgia level good, which Georgia, and a couple other teams, there's only Texas being 8th is still a long ways away from Alabama and Georgia, because some of those defenses are just who's the other? There's one other one that's up there, right? Tied with Georgia.
Is it Michigan?
Michigan, yes. Okay. Yes, there you go. Michigan and Georgia are right there. Now, Florida State's creeping up. They had, of course, a really good performance. I think what was so impressive about Florida State, of course, was all those 3rd and short, 4th and short. Those were some really impressive stops that Florida State made. So Florida State's creeping up. But as good as Texas defense is, they're still not to that elite Georgia-Michigan level, and that's what you need to stop Alabama at home. Unless Alabama just doesn't show up, again, that can happen. There are no locks in gambling. Caveat. But from a probability standpoint, minus 285 is an absolute steal. I love this. I love laying the points. I love everything about Alabama. All right.
I think that horse is dead.
I think the horse is dead. I don't think we should say that. We're not supposed to say that anymore. PETA might get mad at us. Auburn at California.
I grew up on a farm. We had 27 cows.
But did any horses die, or did the cows just die?
No,
horse dying sad, right? No,
yeah, but nothing died. We didn't have horses. I'm saying I lived around the wildlife. People, I am of the wildlife.
Yeah. Yeah. Cal is facing Auburn. This is the game we alluded to earlier where the quarterback depth chart matters. California's quarterback questionable. I'm at 50-50 in the model. This right now is a B grade on Auburn, but honestly, this is probably more like C grade value if California's quarterback plays. If he doesn't, it's probably more like A grade value. That's the fun with gambling. You don't really know who's going to play all the time. They have the same information we do. Here's what we know. If we know more, we will adjust our line. Guess what? So will Vegas. So if we know he's out, this price is going to go up. If we know he's in, this price is going to go down. So whenever we know something more about his status, that affects this. But right now with him being 50-50, this is a pretty big mismatch. Auburn should win this by an average of 13. They win 80% of the time. Cousin Jared, what are your thoughts?
If you want to know more about my thoughts on this game, I would tell you, if you haven't already, go back and watch the show where we talked about the totals, and we did a pretty thorough annihilation, breakdown, dissection. It was really a breakdown, dissection, and then an annihilation of North Texas's defense. And so I would say go listen to that. We talked about the North Carolina, Florida Internet, or excuse me, North Carolina. Talking about bad defenses. Man, I'm stuck in 2022. The North Texas and Florida International game coming up this week. We talked about that on the total show. Go back and listen to that for full context. But Cal offense looked great against North Texas defense. And I think this is going to be a complete reality check for them, not only going up against an SEC defense which you can see rated 88 there, which is a pretty solid defense for a Power 5 school, even by Power 5 standards, a pretty solid defense. And more importantly, I think I mentioned that North Texas ran like 50 plays and only possessed the ball for 20 minutes. Auburn is going to run about 50 plays also in about 20 minutes, but the problem is then they're probably going to have the ball for about 10 more minutes than that. And so
they'll be more successful with it too, which is going to
be a
little bit different on the score.
Yeah. And so I just think that Cal is in for a long time. And Cal has a good defense. I'm not sitting here telling you this game's going to go over or under. I don't know which way this game is going to go. But this is just going to be a completely different type of game than what Cal just went through. It was like everything was easy in that game, and I think probably nothing is going to be easy for Cal in this game. So, yeah, sign me up. But definitely you talk about Tech being a place where teams go and weird things happen. You could say the same thing for Cal. Maybe it's playing along
or Stanford. Some of those both San Francisco schools night games that Pac-12 after dark can get kind of weird.
Yeah, and so again, I'll implore you, take the money line here. Any game that Hugh Freeze is involved, he's probably going to win, but it could get a little sketchy at times. And so I think you want to be on the money line in this one.
North Texas hung in with Cal for the first half. Cal finished the game, I believe, with 31 straight points. If North Texas hung around, that was at home road. Again, I'm not like with the Tech and Wyoming thing. I'm not trying to say that. I mean, that matters more in college than the pros, right? But if North Texas, even at home, was able to hang around, you have to imagine that Auburn is going to be a totally different story, even with the game location. Auburn is not, up there with Alabama, Georgia, LSU, right? But they're a very solid team.
Yeah.
Now, big caveat, and I mentioned this in a previous episode, the SEC is going to have one school out of all these kind of right here in the middle, the A&Ms, the Auburns, the Mississippi States, the Ole Miss, right? That like one of them is just going to accidentally get all the bad breaks and go like 4-8. And we're going to be like, wow, I thought they were better. We say it every year. Every year there's one, right? That we're like, they're better than that. But like, so who knows if that's Auburn? I have no idea. We'll find out later, right? But Auburn is the much better team here. And again, the quarterback thing, that's what to keep an eye on. Again, right now, questionable. Even if he's playing, I still think Auburn minus 260 is a smart play. It's just a little bit closer to the break-even point than if he doesn't play. This game might get ugly because Cal's offense takes a bit of a dive with him being 50-50. If he's out, that Cal offense is going to take even more of a dive. And again, I have to be a little bit concerned because Cal giving up 20 points in the first half to North Texas. How many can Auburn score, right? Is this the same Cal defense that we saw? Are we sure? That's, I guess, my question. Are we sure that this is going to be a traditional Justin Wilcox California defense that we know we've seen before? I'm not saying it will or won't be. I'm just saying what happened? And I don't know. I didn't see a minute of that game. So maybe someone can comment and can tell me, maybe North Texas got a punt return and a pick six and that it was just fluke scoring. Right? I don't know. So maybe it was just fluky, but Auburn's defense rating better than Cal's makes me go, like I thought Cal's defense was supposed to be top notch and the model's not thinking so. So that again gives you some thought that Auburn might put up some points here. Again, not to say if they'll go over or under, but I put up points we think to win. Again, 80% on minus 260B. Great pick. Cousin Jared, that is our show. Do you have any parting words for the viewer?
Go watch the first show of the week, the total show. Glad that you watched this show, the Moneyline show. And again, get with us on Dub Club. Get an extra bonus show where we'll just kind of bat some stuff back and forth later in the week. It's lots of good college football content here and NFL content. I mean, come on. Content. NFL is kicking off. I'm sure most of you are excited about that. We got Jake on with the professor here to break all of that down. So I'm excited to see how Sideline and the two of them do this season.
Yeah, got some good NFL money line plays, some total plays. And we talked about it on show. If you haven't watched the NFL show yet and you want to hit that up, put that in your bookmark, watch that Saturday night. If you hold off your betting until Sunday, watch Sunday morning. The other thing, of course, to note, as part of that, got positional rankings, helps you with your DFS stuff, all this information giving out in the cheat sheet every week. Even I got it for college, got what all the quarterbacks are, got percentages, got for NFL quarterbacks, how many points they're adding to the points. We got so much information. If you want to be a better with more information, Dub Club is the place to be. And again, check out that NFL show if you haven't yet, and that total show. But otherwise, thank you.
I have one more thing. All right. We have 10 a.m. Central football on Saturday. Vanderbilt and Wake Forest are kicking off at 10 a.m. Central. So get your two screens up for the last hour college game day to see Corso do the headgear while simultaneously watching Vanderbilt and Wake Forest.
And we have a pick that we have already locked in that we've given to our Dub Clubbers, a money line pick on that game. If you want it, be with us on Dub Club. So we got some action for if you want that pick. We got something for you. There you go. All right. That's all we've got then. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Picks with the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can enjoy the sports betting content right on this channel, jump right into your feed. We'll be back again all week. Football, baseball, all sorts of content. But until we see you again, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can get your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.